All right, I think this is better. Right. Okay. So I've been talking without sound for a bit. Okay. So, uh, people may know me. Steel Fur, Finbar, L5R player from London. What they don't know, maybe, is that I used to work in communications. I worked in PR for about 7 years. I did communications at an agency for about seven different companies. So when I talk about communications, it's through the lens of someone who did blog posts on the fly in like half an hour to get a news out about a company because things weren't going. Right. So I don't like to do these sort of videos because ultimately they're not that productive. I mean, they're complaining, they're gritty, but I'm also just kind of baffled and laughing at the state of things. And one of the reasons because I used to be on a podcast and just recording times and things like that. Recording with Americans just didn't really work out for me in terms of like scheduled content. So I wanted to do more slapdash, just sort of throw together content and talk about things that came up that interested me. And one of the things that I've just constantly been baffled by is FFGOP. Like it goes from being really good and giving you things you want, like win a court in Spain, to just failing to discuss basic issues when things go wrong, where one short post could, like basically like a pressure valve in a dam, just deal with the problem. And you just have radio silence for weeks. So I want to talk about sort of what how we got here and what has recently occurred just tonight as sort of a quick reaction to what's going on, because I think there's going to be a lot of annoyance and outcry in the community about this. So let's start off. So shortly after Worlds last year, November, the new Kotai series was announced, meant to run from roughly February to August. People were quite excited because rather than the last Kotai season, which had the problem of the clan that won the most, Scorpion, got a card, and the Kotai season before that, where the clan that won the most, Scorpion, got a card, there would in fact be three cards given out, depending on the performance of clans in the top cut, including the clan that won the most, the clan that got to the top cut the most but then lost the most after that, and the clan that had the most mirror matches in the top cut and then fought against itself. So Tides of War, Fiery Vengeance, and Dissension. And people were quite excited about that and very keen to sort of get into what that meant for the future of the game and how this was going to roll out. So we started off with a few sort of things that puzzled people. So, the Madrid Kotai was moved from November, Grand Kotai. That I think I heard that was due to just Colo with the event convention they were at, where the convention moved and then they couldn't run the Grand Kotai. The Dublin one was moved from January because, from what I hear, they preferred to be in Dublin, and the best time to do it in Dublin is when the university there is running their convention, which is Leprechaun this weekend. Um, so that plans were made then to move that to March, so that the team who was based in Dublin wouldn't have to go down to Cork. Right. So then we get down to this page, which to this date has zero Kotai confirmed on it that aren't in America being run by Yeti Gaming or as part of a convention. We have the two big ones, of course, the Grand Kotai in Paris and in Birmingham, which are assumedly on here because FFG had to book the space themselves with the organization. So the big change this year then to Kotai is that you know, they're going to be organized. So the Grand Kotai is still going to be organized by FFG, and the Kotai themselves are going to be organized by local communities and stores, right? That's the big change. And people were generally quite enthusiastic about that because it meant that we could schedule them when we wanted, we could coordinate better to avoid overlap. And we could make it feel more like a community event. Obviously, there's more of a burden in terms of running a Kotai than there is, but also because the dates that we were given for the Kotais were February to August. People, when they heard this news, and I think that came out maybe late last year or early this year, thought, okay, great, get those applications in, and then start planning for when you want your Kotai based on real life considerations, like you need to colo with a convention or something like that, right? So um, so for instance, the Dublin Kotai and the Zaragoza Kotai were booked in for this weekend. Planning for that probably started months ago, just to get the venue and get the space and all that sort of stuff. Um, and here we are. So the events are this weekend. So where does that leave us, right? So before we get into sort of things that have just happened, because that's probably going to be the most of this video and a decent bit of a rant, let's talk about the article that went up today announcing the Prime Championships, right? This is good communication. This is telling us where the majority of Prime Championships are, certainly in America. Um, where the European ones are, who the fuck knows? Why is this article going live without the European events on? Why hasn't that been sorted out? I mean, we see the first one of these is in June, so the first one of these is in May, so they've got some time to figure it out. In America, the first one is in May as well, so they do have some time to figure it out. But equally, there should be some more idea of which countries are running this, rather than just England, Scotland, Ireland. I think those are the countries where FFG has some sort of engagement or that sort of thing. Um, so maybe that's why they're on here. But there should be more information at this point. I know the applications have already gone in, hopefully, as to where these are going to be outside of America and the UK. So I know a lot of people are looking at this article being like, well, this doesn't give me what I need. I mean, L5R is massive in Europe, and this article's gone live without information for a great deal of the player base. But also, the biggest thing I think that's kind of interesting and people are a bit wary of is that there's no information about what the price support is for these events. So these stores, assumedly, that are running these events have agreed to do it with no concept of what they're actually going to be offering. And I'm surprised that so many of them have, because let's not remember that last year a lot of these stores were promised a Phase 2 Elemental Championship kit, which turned out to just be the Phase 1 kit and still had 2018 written on half of the trophies. So, I'm surprised, and I think it's grateful to the community that so many of the stores have chosen to continue supporting L5R, despite the fact that they don't know that this kit is going to be, you know, any good. I mean, that's just absolutely bizarre. It's like, hey, do you want to buy this kit? What's in the kit? Well, we'll tell you later. Okay, okay, cool, cool. There's a crab in that chocolate bar. That's what I swear. Um, and I find that a bit baffling. I just find the lack of information here a bit baffling. So, we have a situation where, and let's unpack this a bit better, because basically the organizer of the Zaragoza Kotai this weekend just posted a post on Facebook, which, and this ties back into something that Alex Watkins, who's the head of OP, said a few weeks ago to someone who was organizing an event. Basically, he is supposed to be running an event in 5 days with 85 people registered. Um, he said on the 25th of February, he got an email saying, you have a Kotai. So then he went on to organize it because he said, cool, I have a Kotai. Then he didn't follow up with some questions, didn't hear anything back. Emailed them again when he had 20 days left, being like, look, we've got a lot of people. We're probably going to need more kits. Got referred back to another email, didn't hear anything back. And then as of today, he had no news. There's no address to sort out the kits. He hasn't paid anything for it. He's just running an event with 90 people in what was supposed to be within the Kotai season, with no understanding of how these things are going to happen, and no communication for, it looks like, at least a month about what's actually going to happen, despite the fact that Matt Holland has been tagged in so many posts, and he is the manager, the social media manager, or whatever his title is for OP. So he knows that this event is happening, right? And no effort has been made to contact the organizers, or even to say to the organizers, look, realistically, this isn't going to happen. Can you postpone? Can you not organize this now? Right? Because this Kotai has been public since pretty much the day that he started organizing it, even potentially before then. And effort has been made to contact the guys who are supposed to be sending out the kits and sorting out all of this for them. And all it would have taken was a simple email being like, that's not a good date, we're not ready yet. Or anything to that regard to let them know. Okay, does this get worse? Yes, it does. So if we scroll down the post, which is full of a lot of vitriol that we'll sort of brush over, so John Butler, who is organising the Dublin Kotai, then said, well, this post obviously worked because I finally received an email from FFG saying the Kotai kits won't start shipping until May, and I should choose a new date for my event. All right. So go back to our Kotai series page. Kotais in America organised between February and July. They've already had prize kits. They've already had Kotais successfully run. They've already had all of that stuff sorted. And yet, despite the fact the Kotai season was supposed to run during this period as well in Europe, we're being told that no Kotais will be organised until May, because that's the earliest the kits are going to ship out. Despite the fact that we're looking forward to, of course, we were looking forward playing from February to August, which if we do our quick maths is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months of L5R, and now we're being told May, June, July, August. So what, 4 months of L5R, which turns from easy enough to convince my significant other friends to come with me to one tournament every month or two to I can attend one Kotai this year, I can attend two Kotai this year, maybe if I'm lucky enough to have time off then, um and that sort of thing. So let's break this down into two things. The first thing is that the idea that you're going to organize this sort of year-long event, which has previously run from November to August and later, and the stuff is only going to be ready in May, doesn't really make sense because that's never been how it's happened before. The fact that you're going to let people organize events based on the idea that you're going to be able to support them within that time period you've specified and know that they're organizing these events. Let's not forget that these events have been publicized, that people are talking about them, and that the judges are far more involved with FFG and helping them run other events and things like that than I am. And no effort has been made to communicate to them and say, actually, maybe you shouldn't run this event on that day because we're not going to have the stuff for you. Like, I'm talking like a five line email, right? Okay, there are many reasons that this could have happened, and like there are many reasons why communication is so hard. I mean, the question is, what is happening behind the scenes at FFG, which we can't gather? I mean, they probably are understaffed because the company has laid off a lot of people, but equally, you can write a short email that explains, because and we're quite understanding as a community in terms of we were all quite upset when we heard about FFG's downsizing. Writing a short email saying, look, realistically, we're understaffed this year. Until we get stuff sorted out, we're not going to be able to deliver on that time frame. And just letting organizers know, I mean, that's just politeness, right? That's just common courtesy, because you're expecting these people to organize events for you that you were previously running, and you're not letting them know that they're not going to be able to do that within the time frame you've promised. Even just an updated post saying, look, we said the time frame for Kotai in Europe would be from this date to this date. Realistically, we're not going to be able to get them out in this date. You're going to have to run them. Like, because even if the kits get delivered in May, let's remember that there's a Grand Kotai on May the 15th to the 17th and another one on May the 29th to the 31st. I don't know about any other L5R players from Europe, but my budget for L5R and my free time for L5R is done. Like, it's done in May and probably done in June as well, because I've already spent all that money in May, right? Going to a 3-day event. So, I might go to my local Kotai in London. Am I going anywhere else? Like, where's that preparation? L5R players in Europe love to travel from event to event. We love going and meeting our friends in other countries. And if you give us time, we'll do that. And every event will be huge. But that's not connecting here. That's not connecting now. There's a disconnect between, what we need as a community and what's being communicated with us at a very simple level, which is just, promise what you're going to deliver on it, and if you can't, just let us know and let us adapt to what's happening. Yeah, so it's completely baffling. And then this response to John saying, kits won't start shipping until May, so you should choose a new date for your event. So I just finished running an event as part of my company work, which had 300 people in. If anyone emailed me 3 or 4 days before the event, which probably almost happened because of coronavirus, and said, sorry, that's not going to happen. Can you reorganize your event with 5 days to go? Now, the Dublin Kotai is already poorly attended because they only got confirmation it would be a Kotai, 3 weeks ago? So we're already expecting like 25 people, like not that many. But then the notion that when people heard it was a Kotai, they booked because that's why we were going. And the very notion then that, you're asking them to reschedule that event with 5 days notice when they've already agreed with a convention they're going to be there, where like that entire response is just that is tone deaf right there. I'll just come out. I'll come straight out and say it. That is tone deaf. Because this is the thing that baffles me, right? So I don't ever think, like, the design side of the game, which I get up in arms about every now and then, is one thing, right? Designing card games is difficult. Balancing a card game with 7 distinct factions that are all trying to 1v1 each other is difficult, right? Reaching that level of balance where all the clans are reasonably close together is hard. And actually, we're kind of in a position where that's happening, where there's lots of design interactions going down, right? But communication from a company to its community that it relies on to buy its product is easy, right? It just is easy, right? It doesn't have to be long-winded articles. It doesn't have to be this complicated thing. We're happy for event information to be passed to an event organizer and for them to put out a Facebook post saying, look, realistically, this is going to happen this way. We're happy for these channels to be used. We're happy if someone, I mean, we're obviously not happy if someone says, look, realistically, the season this year is going to be delayed, but we understand that there are people on the other side of this who are trying to make this system work. And if the reason that you can't do this is just that you're understaffed because of corporate layoffs, like, we get that. We all have jobs. Most of us, maybe been let go at some point, right? So, you know, there is a mechanism for generating both empathy and solid communication with your player base, and it just seems that none of it is being used. Now, when you're in the trenches and communication, as I've been many times, sometimes it is easy to get so bogged down on what you're doing, you forget to talk to people, right? To get so bogged down with getting the next thing out, or your boss is telling you realistically 80% of your time needs to be on Keyforge because that's making a ton of money, and you can only really give 20% of your time to L5R. And as long as Keyforge is fine, then you're fine. Your KPI is done, right? Okay, so you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll put my time on Keyforge then. But you can still spare at some point of that 20% just an update about when something goes wrong, or if you can't deliver, or something else happens. Unless your boss has just told you can never talk about anything negative. And if that is the case, then you are never going to be able to run community organized events because stuff is always going to go wrong. And if you can't tell people, then you're ultimately just going to fail at the very basic instant. So, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this. I mean, it just seems like I think we all know it that something is broken down in terms of communication. And from our perspective, I think given the amount of information the community would be happy with, which is just a post here or there that gives us an update on where things are, good or bad, that just lets us set reasonable expectations that we can plan our life around, our hobby around, isn't really that much to ask for. Like, because ultimately this comes down to something, and I want to do a proper video about this in terms of game design later on, is that when you're buying a product from a company, and events are very much a product as much as the cards are, as much as they sell events, why are you buying product from a company where it's an uphill struggle, right? Why are you buying product from a company that constantly disappoints you rather than surprises you, excites you, makes you want to get involved? Like, it feels like as an L5R customer, the company isn't courting you to try and buy their product. They're selling you a product which, if you play certain clans, feels like a great game and a great product, and it generally is quite well designed. But, if you play a clan that competitively gets bad cards, like, well, no, Laughing Spider, right? So what can be done though isn't avoiding this match job. When communication of this level breaks down, it is ultimately never the job of simply the person who is responsible for putting out the tweets and the discussion, right? So having worked in that career, I can tell you that the most junior person, the person who's putting out the comms, is probably the person who has least say in what he says, right? Um, you'll think, oh, people need to know about this. You'll say, okay, can we tell people this? You'll send it to your boss, and your boss will be like, no, 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 you can't say that. Or your boss will have to refer it to legal because of whatever reason. Like, there are rumors circulating that Asmodee is either trying to sell itself or sell FFG. If that's the case, then potentially every communication FFG puts out has to be approved by either a legal or a marketing team. And then suddenly, what I'm describing here is a bottleneck, right? It could be the case that the person who's doing the communications is bad at their job, but I've met Matt. He's really nice. When he talks to us, he gives us good information, responds to our questions, and handles things in that way. Ultimately, when these things go wrong, it's never the failure of the comms guy at the bottom of the pyramid. Not never, but you know what I mean. There's always some form of legal, of corporate issue filtering its way that stops that person from just going on Facebook and talking directly to the people they want to talk to communicate the information. from my experience at least. Now, obviously, it's hard to speculate because you're not inside the internal workings of this company. But if you said it's just because that guy is doing a bad job and not talking to us, I mean, I would that sentence doesn't hold true with me based on my experience from communications. In my experience, it's always the corporate mechanisms getting in the way. Like I've had a company where if I wanted to send a tweet, it had to be approved by 5 people. I've worked in that job, right? Where I want to send a tweet with the company handle just saying, isn't this great? We've done this, and it literally had to go through 5 layers of approval just to get sent out. Um, and I could work around that because I was working in a slow feed industry where my tweets were planned 6 months in advance. I made a spreadsheet, and then it went to people and they got approved, right? And then they got approved slowly, but then I had 6 months worth of content, right? I couldn't do fast reaction in that job, which a consumer product like a card game needs, right? However, and this comes back to the point, FFG have roughly known. Well, Matt does a lot of talking to the community, and he probably helps writing the articles and has a lot of stuff to do. Like, I wouldn't say his job isn't being used. I think that's probably a bit of bluntness there that isn't true. I'm sure he does a lot of work behind the scenes. I'm sure the only part of the I'm sure talking to us on Facebook is not the only part of a job of someone who works in comms for a company like FFG, right? I'm just going to go out and say that. I'm sure that is not the case. So it's impossible to speculate what the barrier is to good communication between them and us. We can only really talk about what we need from them, and I think it's clear what we need. We just need to know when stuff's happening. If there's a delay and it's for a decent reason, just tell us. We'll work it out from there. Like, we're all people. This is a hobby. It's not like an ambulance or a critical service. We'll get pissed off if things go wrong. Anyway, but we're not gonna, no one's gonna die. Like when there were delays with the products and things went wrong with the Lion Pack, if they just told us that things went wrong and what happened, we would have been like, okay, that's shit. I don't get my board games for another 3 months. But also, I mean, that whatever, the factory fucked up. That sucks. I don't get my board games for another 3 months. Like, we tend to overreact because we're a very vocal and passionate community. But I think if we were given enough information to react to the situation, then we wouldn't feel so forced to react in that sort of visceral way, because we would rationalize it a lot easier as human beings dealing with a problem presented to us and say, okay, well, they're fixing the solution, but we know what the problem is, right? So this is to sort of return back to what I was talking to before, lovely interactions with my audience, which is what I enjoy as a streamer. There's just this thing is that we're playing games where we don't feel as the consumers that the company is that invested in us as people, right? Playing that game. Like, you want to feel like you're being courted, that there's something exciting in a pack that justifies you buying it. You're not just buying it to keep up with the latest, release. You want to feel excited to go to an event with enough time to plan it and to plan to go to it. You want to feel like the company that's organized these things for you ultimately respects your time, your holiday time, your social, like your family schedule, and treats it like a hobby which has to be planned in advance. You can't drop everything at the last minute to go to do something or not to do something if you've already made plans to based on the information that was available. There needs to be this sort of, I don't know, it just feels like, and a lot of people are going to make jokes about how Keyforge is FFG's big cash cow now, and they're going to get all the time. But ultimately, like, whilst that is true, it's not like L5R requires a great deal of maintenance in terms of communication, right? I'm sure organizing these kits to get printed, organizing to get them shipped, all those sorts of things is a lot of work behind the scenes. But that work is happening because you have it on a spreadsheet. It's being tracked. You know if it's running on time or not. You know if it's being delayed due to something like coronavirus or something like that. And you know how people are structuring and planning their lives around the information you've given them. And if something like this occurs where events are being organized based on the information that's available, but and then that information becomes incorrect and those events are still being organized, then you need to communicate to people and let them know that that doesn't work anymore. As a baseline, just that level of communication. The fact that it took a follow-up email, say from John who's organizing Dublin, to get and this angry post to get a response saying the kit isn't coming until May, maybe you should change your date. Like, that itself is indicative of the flaw, because it means you're fighting fires rather than actually planning what people actually need. Like, never mind the other levels of communication we've had. I mean, Alex Watkins did an AMA. That's how we found out that Worlds is going to be in Spain, not through official channels of communication. We know the date can't be organized until the Spanish football season has been set, not because of anything official communicated, but just because of rumors and that sort of thing. We roughly know where Kotais are going to be happening because the event organizers, say in places like London, have told people when the Kotais are going to be, not through any official communication from FFG. We now know when the kits are going to arrive because of a rushed Facebook response to a rushed email to someone after a crisis. There needs to be a solid plan that allows you to tell people when your community needs to know things. And if that's not in place, this OP is is dead. It needs to fix itself, because we're going from disappointment to disappointment. We're going from prize misprinting. I mean, have you seen Adorned Barcher has the wrong strength? Daisho is printed, but the card is now banned. Like, errata haven't been updated on cards. Uji was printed without traits and with the wrong ability. Like, never mind all of that prize problems. I mean, Daisho being banned is a bad example because the promo was probably printed before the ban happened. But not rushing out something else to give to those players now that you're actually giving them a banned card as a participation prize for a competition, or finding some way to substitute it with something else, or like rushing something from a previous promo kit or printing something in-house, or even getting them something fun, like anything fun. Like literally something dragon themed, a fan with a dragon mon on, anything, like just something, right, that doesn't just stand there as you get a banned card as your participation prize, and all the dragon players are like, why don't I just play a different clan this month, because I don't really care if I get a banned card. John Butler is running Dublin. John Butler is I don't want to draw too much attention, but all the European players know John because he helps run like Poland, Dublin, Birmingham. He's very, very good at running tournaments. He runs a lot of tournaments for FFG, and then he's also running Dublin because he's Irish. So yeah, obviously I don't want to talk too much about him because he's his own person. He can talk for himself. But just in terms of he's quite well known in terms of running events, and he runs a very tight ship. John runs an excellent event. They somehow always run to time. He once ran a Kotai in Dublin where the event venue that it was on was flooded the night before by a leaked pipe, and there was 2 feet of water in the venue, and he found another one for I think the next day, and managed to get everyone there and run an event. So John is very good at running events, and when he says there's a problem, you tend to listen. So yeah. I think I'm really coming to the end of this rant because I don't really have any solutions other than please just communicate better. Bite-sized comments to the right people so we can spread them around. Our community is very good at spreading information and rumors. If you post a post on Facebook tagging a few right people, everyone will know about it. I'm not saying this is the best way to communicate because obviously official updates on your website are the best way to communicate. But if you're going to need to do this sort of actually telling us things that let us plan our lives for the next however long we need to plan to get to these events and ensure good attendance, do it. Like, if there is a post on Facebook, people on the Discord will screenshot it. We will make sure everyone sees it, and we will try and get as many of us to come to events as makes sense. If there's a delay and you let us know, we will move things. Like, we will. There's no point in this where I think the community will not respond with reason and understanding if a genuine problem occurs and there's a reason that something happens. If coronavirus declares printing of their of their kits, then tell us. We'll sort it out. If you haven't got enough staff to do it, or something along those lines, just be like, look, we'll try and get better, but this can't happen until then. Don't even say the reason. Just be like, realistically, we can't do this until then. Can I end this stream on a note of positivity? Yes, potentially. Stream of positivity. I'm always positive about L5R. The next cycle rally promises to speed up the game in an interesting way. City of the Rich Frog and those who serve is broken, and that card needs to be banned. That's not positive at all. Let's see. Errata those who serve so it doesn't reduce cost below 1, so my opponent can't buy 7 characters for free. That's what needs to happen. Okay, so dash of positivity. There are a lot of very exciting decks to play at the moment in L5R. If you're towering with Unicorn, towering with Lion, even honor running decks, which people would have laughed at a year ago. Dragon is punching the hell out of people with mugs. Crab is sacrificing their own guys and throwing them at their opponents, which is pretty normal. Scorpion is still broken. No, let's not talk about Scorpion. And Crane is not doing well either, so let's not talk about Crane. Look, in general, you'll see this over the next few weeks. I'm very positive about this game. I like talking about it. I like doing these short little streams where I talk about issues. And you'll see, and you've seen videos from me recently. You'll see me streaming in the Discord League. You'll see me doing some other content that I have planned. Generally, you'll see me being quite positive about where the game is and the mechanics of it and how it's going, and even about the design of the game. As a Dragon player, saying I support the design of the game is a bit tricky, but I love the mechanics of the game and I like the way that it sorts itself out and how it does all these things. The real issues, just communication, really. It's not even the events. Like when you get to a Kotai or a Grand Kotai, they're usually run very well, especially in Europe. Um, the price support is usually quite good. You have well run. They usually run to time, which is important in card games. Because I've been at events that have run 3 or 4 hours late, and that no one wants to be playing until 12 o'clock at night. Even if you're staying in a hotel next door, you just don't want to. And you feel special, and there is banners up, and Worlds is usually fantastic in terms of price support, but also in terms of community. A lot of what makes this game great comes from the community, which is why I was so excited when they said Kotai would now be organized by local communities. Because I know certainly for London, we're already planning, special prizes for side events. We're planning playmats and things like that. And I won't steal the thunder of the guy who's actually organizing it. My point is that when we heard that we were getting a Kotai, we started thinking, how can we make this special? And I imagine that every other person who got a Kotai thought, how can I make my one special? How can I get people who want to come to my Kotai and make it enthusiastic? And when you give that power to the community to organize those events, you give them that power to generate these fantastic. We won't go into royalist or abolitionist here, but the point is that because I'm not saying God save the Queen, I'm mostly Irish. The point is that when you give that power to the community to create these things, you do create that great, fantastic flair that everyone can bring to it. But you have to communicate with the community. You have to let them know what's happening. You have to give them the right information so that they can plan when the event's going to be, and enough information so they can plan a cheap venue, to be honest, where they're co-located with a games convention or something like that, because not every place can afford, like London. If we didn't have a gaming shop that could host this many people, we wouldn't be able to run a Kotai. Like we wouldn't be able to rent an event space to host that many people in. Like that just wouldn't happen. So you need to have that ability to plan ahead to get those cheap dates. Like, what if someone that's like, let's just finish on this discussion. I'm trying to end on a positive note, but I keep getting sidetracked. But what if one of the people who's been awarded a Kotai knows that they're getting their kit in May and the event has to be run by at least November, but I think originally it was said August, but that might be extended now until not November because that's when Worlds is. It needs to happen before Worlds. It needs to happen enough before Worlds that um, the prizes can be sorted out by FFG. So say they don't have a venue they can find in July or August, or no one wants to come because in August it's summer holidays and they're off with their kids. Suddenly the attendance at these events is going to plummet, and what happens then? Are people going to be out of pocket because they bought the kit and not enough people show up? Are the events going to have to clash because they're now in a shorter time frame? And people are going to have to organize these overlapping, which will completely tank attendance, certainly in Europe, because we're usually up for a jolly to another country to try and get Hatamoto. And what has happened this year, aside from the staff layoff and the change to community-run kotais, that has made this so drastic from last year, where the calendar was published well in advance? Maybe switching to community run. Well, this is the thing: you switch to community run because you've had to lay off a lot of people, unfortunately. But you then don't have the people to run the level of communication you need to manage community run events, which is the problem. Anyway, I've talked a lot about this. I realize we're hitting up to 40 minutes on a video, and I did want to make this a quick reaction post, but I think I've got a lot of good ground covered, and even a bit of positivity. So thank you all for listening. Obviously, I'll post this on YouTube, and yeah, hopefully we can see some sort of improvement, because I think everyone sees that improvement is necessary. Right, talk to you all soon.